All right, so today we're going to start talking about ions. So the other day we started talking about the periodic table and elements and matter, and today we're going to go a little bit further into that and talk about something we call ions. So what is an ion? It's an atom or a group of atoms where the number of electrons doesn't equal the number of protons. How are they actually formed? Well, they're formed when atoms either gain or lose electrons. So atoms cannot gain or lose neutrons without actually changing the type of atom that it is, but they can gain or lose electrons. So you can still have calcium and it can have one less electron than it may have before, and this is what we would call a calcium ion. If it loses electrons, it becomes a positively charged ion. If it gains electrons, it becomes a negatively charged ion. And this is because the electrons control that charge by bringing in that negative charge. So how do we determine their charge? The number of electrons gained or lost determines the actual magnitude of the ion's charge. The periodic table helps to predict what ions an element will make. So if you look at this chart right here, you'll notice that anything with a more red color has a weak nuclear attraction, and therefore it has a tendency to form positive ions. And anything that's in the blue has a tendency to form more negative ions. And then we have this purple area, which is that last group there on the end. And these don't have a tendency to form ions of either type because that group happens to have a completely full valence shell, or the outermost shell has all of the electrons it possibly can, and it holds on to those really, really tightly. So it doesn't gain or lose electrons very easily. So if you look at this atom over on the right, this atom would be considered neutral because the number of protons equals the number of electrons. So when there's the same number of protons and electrons, we have a balanced atom, which is considered neutral. This atom would be considered positive because the number of protons is greater than the number of electrons. Because there's only one electron in this shell and there's two neutrons, we know that the net charge would then be positive. This atom would be considered negative because the number of protons is less than the number of electrons. So in this atom, we notice that there's 3 electrons around the outside and still only those 2 protons in the middle. This one would have a net positive charge of -1. So once again, if you look at this, you have protons, neutrons, and electrons around the outside. The same number of protons and electrons means it's neutral or balanced. If there's more electrons than protons, there's more negative charge, so that there is a negatively charged ion. And when there's more protons than electrons, we have a positively charged ion. So what would be the charge of this ion? Neutral. What would be the charge of this ion? This one would be positive because there is 2 positive protons in the middle and only 1 electron. And what about this last one? This one would be considered negative as there are 2 electrons for every 1 proton in the middle. Go ahead and move on to the rest of your work for today. Once you've completed that, you may go on Quizlet for some vocab review.